Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the semifinals of Grand Prix Las Vegas. I'm Gabby Sparks, joined by Luis Scott Vargas. And here in the semifinals, we have Theau Mery with Mono White Hatebears versus Alan Wu. And here we see that Theau was #1 seed, Alan Wu #4. So he gets to go first. And we're going to see one of these quick Affinity starts. Theau Mery with a Thraben Inspector getting a clue, an Ornithopter, a Vault Scourge, and a Blink Moth Nexus for Alan.
I've yet to see an Affinity player play a Mox Opal. I think they still play that card, but they haven't started with that in quite some time. On the other hand, Thraben Inspector, you know, not the card I expected to see in the top 8 of this modern Grand Prix, but here we are.
So Cavernous Souls. And Luis, tell me a little bit about the decision here to play mono white Hatebears as opposed to, we've seen other types of Hatebears, right? We've seen white blue, you can see white black. What about this just mono white decision?
Yeah, Craig Westcombe made top 8 with white green, so white red Hatebears is the only the only combination we haven't seen. Basically, you lose the ability to play something like Noble Hierarch or Loxodon Smiter, but you gain a better mana base, and in that you get to play 9 basic planes, and Theau gets to play the full copies of 4 Ghost Quarters, 4 Tectonic Edge, so just gets a lot of colorless lands.
All right, so Leon and Arbiter getting in. The Vault Scourge got in also, which does chip down Theau to 19, but also gets to gain 1 point of life here for Alan.
Oh, and Alan didn't have a second land, so he has a powerful hand here with Steel Overseer and Master of Ethereum, but without a Springleaf Drum, a Mox Opal, or a second land, he's not going to really be able to compete with the start that Theau has.
All right, so Theau with that Blade Splicer getting also a 3/3 Golem.
But I guess Ornithopter holds off Thraben Inspector just like he drew it up.
These Ornithopters were made for blocking. They kind of weren't. All right, so Signal Pest, Vault Scourge getting in.
And Alan's going to be in a lot of trouble if Theau draws Ghost Quarter, because Ghost Quarter can take out the Nexus with a Leon Arbiter in play, no searching is allowed, and all of a sudden that'll make it unlikely that Alan ever casts a relevant spell this game.
Yeah, Affinity doesn't need that many lands to be functional, but needs some lands. As you mentioned before, here is the Ornithopter getting in front of the Thraben Inspector, but taking quite a bit of damage here from Leon and Arbiter and the Golem. Wow, and this is nice. Flicker Wisp, blinking that Blade Splicer, gets another Golem into play.
Yeah, now 2 Golems, Leon Arbiter, Flicker Wisp, Blade Splicer, and Thraben Inspector. You know, who's got the explosive start now? I don't think Affinity can compete with this kind of board presence, especially off only just 1 land. Flicker Wisp picked off a Signal Pest. Don't see that happen very often.
Yeah, most of the times it feels like Signal Pest is basically quote-unquote unblockable, but not fully.
Yeah, it looks like it met its match finally.
All right, Ornithopter jumping in front of the Thraben Inspector again. 2 Golems, Flicker Wisp, and Leon and Arbiter getting in. Alan down to 5. Sarah Avenger coming down.
Second land there for Alan, but I think it's too little too late.
Yeah, and that is too little too late. So Theau up a game here in the semifinals, and that was a really quick game.
Wow.
That wasn't even, there wasn't that much hating going on. It was just aggressive.
It was heavy on the bears, light on the hate.
All right, so here is Alan's Affinity deck. Anything notable, or is this the Affinity we know and love, or hate?
Yeah, I was going to say love. The most appealing card in the sideboard here, I think, is Gear per Ether Grid. Just against a deck full of small creatures, it's got a pretty effective way of just pinging down the opponent's forces. And it's also pretty good against Stony Silence, which is we're going to see in a couple minutes is one of Theau's best answers to Affinity. Etch Champion is also interesting, though. Blade Splicer makes Etch Champion a lot less effective. Making colorless golems means you can't really rely on its champion as being unblockable and unstoppable.
All right, so this is Theau's Mono White Hatebears.
With 2 copies of Stony Silence, 2 Sun Lances. That's
all right. I mean, you're playing Mono White. You have a limited amount of choices for your removal spells, I suppose.
Yeah, and Sun Lance, does the job. It can kill like a Steel Overseer or a Vault Scourge or what have you. So, not a very heavy anti-affinity sideboard, but
the Stony Silences are pretty good.
Yeah, Stony Silence is pretty effective. And we finally might assemble the combo of, we've been showing the various keeper moles over the course of the weekend, and we've got the double Ether Vial, double Stony Silence keeper mole. We might actually live the dream and and show such a thing. Though I think that Theau would probably keep it if it came down to that.
Very cool choice here, this Mono White Hatebears deck. We haven't actually seen any of this so far in the tournament.
If you had told me there were going to be more Mirren Crusaders than Death Shadows in the top 8 of this Grand Prix, I would not have believed you, but there's 2 decks playing Mirren Crusader and 0 decks playing Death Shadow.
Mirren Crusader in 2017. There you can see Alan shuffling, making sure he's sideboarding.
Technically he's not shuffling now, he's just kind of looking through his deck.
He is sideboarding though. And was that necessary?
It wouldn't be necessary normally, but at the end of a 4-day stint of Grand Prix coverage, it's especially necessary.
I am actually very surprised about this top 8, I'm not going to lie. I want to see if we can get... I would love to see a breakdown and see how popular Grixis Shadow was on day 2, because I can't believe we're seeing the semifinals and there's not even 1 copy of it.
Yeah, we had 2 copies of Hatebears, 1 green-white, 1 mono-white, 3 copies of Affinity, a burn deck, an Eldrazi Tron deck, and a Taking Turns deck. That was our Grand Prix Vegas modern top 8. Wow, you know what I just realized?
Yeah?
If Theau wins this match and then wins the finals, we'll have both Grand Prix Las Vegases won by mono-white Hatebears. Death and Taxes and Legacy.
You're totally right.
But and not even like green-white, like straight mono-white.
Yeah.
I guess you have 4 Rashad and Port, 4 Wasteland and Legacy. You have 4 Tectonic Edge, 4 Ghost Quarter in Modern. Is the mono-white Hatebear strategy too strong?
Has science gone too far?
Also, the draft deck that Tiago Saprito won Grand Prix Las Vegas of Limited with was mono-white too.
Rigged.
Yeah, it was red-black. But look, I'm trying to spin a narrative. I think that's my job. One really good thing for Theau here is if he actually has a good Affinity matchup, if this is something that he wants to play against and he's well prepared for, well, he knows he's facing Affinity in the finals. The other side of the bracket, 2 Affinity decks, and he's going to have to, defeat 2 Affinity decks in a row if he wants to go home with the title.
What do you think of the fact that one of the benefits that you get in Modern is the fact that you get much better mana bases, right? Between fetches and shocks and a lot of the fast lands, you just have really good mana bases for 3-color decks. But going with a mono-white Hatebears plan, how much do you think this deck gets by not ever really having any mana issues,
I think having your lands do powerful things besides just tap for mana is a big advantage. This mono-white deck has 8 colorless lands that have additional uses, and Ghost Quarter especially is a very powerful card. In fact, you just talked about how Modern has the potential for great mana bases and these 3-color decks. 6 of our decks in the top 8 are monocolor. If you count, if you count Eldrazi and the 3 Affinity decks, the mono-white Hatebears deck. The Taking Turns deck is essentially monocolor, and even Craig Wesco's green-white deck and the Burn deck are both not particularly colorful. So it sounds like people just don't want to get punished for their mana base, and these monocolor decks are a way to do that.
All right, and we are off to the races here. Memnite. Okay, this is the Affinity start that we have come to know. Ornithopter, Signal Pest, the Springleaf Drum, and Memnite 2.
And Alan's last 2 cards, Darksteel Citadel and Cranial Plating. So this is the Nut Affinity start.
This definitely is. So tapping 2 mana. Looks like that Ornithopter's being set to the side. Used to equip on the Signal Pest and bam, attack. Cranial Plating on the Signal Pest. Also a little bit of a beef for that Memnite.
So it looks like 8 points of damage coming in.
8 damage on turn 2. And that is just a game. Look, when Affinity does, this is the reason that I'm never going to believe that Affinity's a good guy. It's because Affinity can do exactly.
Affinity is one of the good guys. Look at this. I thought we were just watching them sideboard. Did we miss something? And Theau loses a game where his only play was a tectonic edge followed by a concession.
Yeah. I mean, you just can't. This is the thing with Affinity, right? A percentage of the time, Affinity's going to have that hand, and you just can do absolutely nothing about it.
All right, Alan. You run that back one more time, you might find yourself in the finals of the Grand Prix.
It's certainly looking like Affinity's going to be in the finals. So.
Well, we do know that there will be an Affinity deck in the finals.
I wonder if it'll be an Affinity mirror. How good do you think the Affinity versus Grixis Shadow matchup is? Because they had to battle a million of those decks on the way here.
They did, and I think that the Grixis Shadow decks skimp a little bit on Affinity hate because they have Kolagon's Command as a kind of catch-all. What that means is that they're not as prone to run any specific anti-Affinity cards, and decks that don't run any anti-Affinity cards, like decks without Ancient Grudge or Shattering Spree or actually by Force is a new kind of interesting one, the Red X, Destroy X artifacts.
Yeah.
Played that one in Vintage against Workshops. Pretty good.
That's actually pretty sweet.
Stony Silence, any of those cards. Decks without those cards tend to have problems against Affinity, even if they have Kolagon's Commands and Fatal Pushes in the main deck. So fighting fair against Affinity is not always great. Though, now that I say that, if fighting fair doesn't work out, could you really be called one of the good guys?
I like that we have come around full circle in this discussion.
Chad does point out Ceremonious Rejection is an anti-Affinity card. It is okay against Affinity. I'm not going to ever say a counterspell is great against Affinity. It is fine. Like, you'll board in Ceremonious Rejection and it is decent. But it's, I think, a little more effective against something like Eldrazi Tron than it would be against Affinity.
Yeah, with Affinity, I guess you're just looking to get one of their high-impact cards, right? But a lot of times, that's the thing that's hard with cards like Chalice against Affinity, too. You're like, when you want to set your Chalice on one, but they're just like, whoop.
Yeah, like imagine if Theau had a Chalice on one there. Even if he had a Chalice on one and was on the play, Alan's entire hand was on the table on turn one. We wouldn't have done anything.
Yeah, I've heard from a number of people that they don't even want to bring Chalice in against Affinity. It's, you either have it and it's okay in the beginning, it's too slow in the draw, and if you draw it somewhere in the middle of the game, you just want to concede right there. All right, so we are heading here into our Game 3 of the semifinals. Mono White Hatebears versus Affinity.
And I don't see a Stony Silence. I see an Aether Vial. I see a Thalia. I see a Blade Splicer.
I mean, that seems like a pretty good start. Aether Vial.
Yeah, Aether Vial into Thalia and a Blade Splicer. I mean, that's a just perfectly normal start. That's the kind of hand that gets crushed against like a good Affinity hand, though.
Yeah. Well, most hands get crushed against a good Affinity hand is the thing.
Well, and that's why you mulligan to Stony Silence. I'm not saying that Theau should do that, but that is one of the reasons people do employ that strategy sometimes.
Alan's still pondering here whether he wants to keep this or not.
Pondering is banned in Legacy, or in Modern.
And he says nay. So how well do you think Affinity mulligans?
Affinity actually doesn't mulligan all that well, despite, being one of the best decks in Modern. Part of it is it's got a lot of critical mass cards like Cranial Plating and Arcbound Ravager, and it's got a lot of pieces it needs to assemble, like Springleaf Drum without an Ornithopter or a Memnite is a lot worse. Mox Opal without 3 artifacts on turn 1 or 2 is a lot worse. And you can end up stranded with a hand with too much mana, the double Drum Opal Ornithopter 2 lands hand that just has no payoff cards. So not the deck you want to mulligan with. Not that you want to mulligan with any deck, but something like Grixis Shadow could mulligan, I think, and not really notice it as much, whereas Affinity, it hurts a lot more.
So given what you know right now with both Alan mulliganing and the fact that Theau's on the play, who do you think is favored?
It's funny that with both players having 7 cards, I actually think Alan would be favored because Theau's hand is just fine. It's not great. Alan mulling on the draw, I would say Theau's slightly ahead, but Affinity is well within its range to have a much more explosive hand.
All right, so Alan has kept this, and we are here on our Game 3 of the semifinals at Grand Prix Las Vegas. Scry at the bottom, kicking things off with an Aether Vial. And now let's see how fast this start is for Alan. Vault Scourge. Memnite. Go.
Okay, no drum, no Mox Opal, but still four cards on turn 1 in Alan's hand. Land and 2 more Vault Scourges. All right, so this is the hand without any big payoffs, but if Alan can draw an Arcbound Ravager or a Steel Overseer, then he might be able to get something going.
That was just an Ornithopter. We're going to see a Thalia pass back to Alan. Vault Scourge getting in there. Darksteel Citadel. Yeah, and this is Alan just dumped the entire hand. Now drawing something, yeah, like you said, a cranial plating here would be incredible, but all of these, this is what the problem that Affinity gets into sometimes, right? All these creatures are very unassuming on their own.
Yeah, Alan would love to draw cranial plating. Thalia's punishing it a little bit, but I still think like I would elect to put cranial plating on top of my deck if I were Alan, even though I couldn't cast it quite yet.
So Thalia getting in there.
It's actually not 0 that Alan wants to just block with a bunch of his creatures, but
and actually trade it off.
Looks like he wants to keep all his Vault Scourges alive.
All right, Blade Splicer for Theau. In comes a Golem as well.
Signal Pest actually a pretty effective draw too with 4 flying creatures.
All right, so Vault Scourge is all coming in. Nice thing about them having lifelink.
All right, now cranial plating, super live draw, Master of Ethereum, great draw, Arcbound Ravager, Steel Overseer. Alan's got to draw one of these cards. If he does, he's in great shape. Theo's hand is basically all lands. I think might actually be all lands before this draw.
Theau cashing in that Horizon Canopy.
And, you know, the Vault Scourges are actually winning the race here.
Yeah, lifelink is very nice right here. In comes Thalia and the Golem. We're going to see a pass back to Alan. All right, so the whole team is coming in.
Does Theau have something to violin?
He does. Oh, no, it's a Path to Exile.
Well, pathing a Vault Scourge is not the end of the world for Alan. I guess it's lucky he didn't draw Master and play at pre-combat. Path would have gotten him pretty good there. Can Alan's army of 1/1s really get this done?
They really only need 1 card before they become great, right? Oh, Signal Pest is exactly what you were talking about.
Signal Pest offers a lot of power. It's essentially 3 points of flying power. It also, because it pumps those Memnites, might make it so Theau just can't attack with Thalia. Is that a Flicker Wisp? Because if that's a Flicker Wisp,
yeah, it is.
That's a huge game. That was possibly one of the best cards that Theau could draw, because he's now going to be able to Violent Flicker Wisp, blink his Blade Splicer, block the Signal Pest once it attacks. Alan needs to draw something. Alan is significantly behind after that Flicker Wisp top deck.
All right, so in comes a Golem. Drops Alan down to 10. Ghost Quarter takes care of that island.
That's a good move. Alan can't even cast Master of Ethereum or Thoughtcast if he draws it now.
All right, so here come all the creatures, and this is exactly what you were talking about. Flicker Wisp, Blink, Blade Splicer, block the Signal Pest. The other creatures get a beef for this turn, but the Signal Pest is dead. End of the turn, it comes back. Bring another Golem. Oh, that one looks real mad too.
And now Theau has 12 points of damage on the board if he wants to attack with everything. And Alan isn't quite there, though. Theau wants to make sure, if he can, not die to Ravager, but I don't think he's got a way out of dying to Arcbound Ravager just because it can put the counters anywhere.
Ether Vial ticking up to 4.
So Theau drew a Sunlance. So if he Sunlances down one of the Vault Scourges, Alan still has exactly enough damage to kill Theau if he draws an Arcbound Ravager. That's the card he needs. Alan needs to not chump block here. He needs just to take the full 9. And then if he draws Ravager, he has 5 artifacts to sacrifice to Ravager. It's a 6/6. Put 6 counters on the last Vault Scourge. Attack for 7. So this next draw step is going to determine Alan Wu's Grand Prix fate.
You got to play to your odds, you know. Alan down to 5. Here's a Sunlands. Kill the Vault Scourge. All right, huge draw step here for Alan.
Is that a cranial plating?
I believe so.
Oh, cranial plating a few turns too late. Uncastable thanks to Thalia. Even if Alan draws a land to cast it next turn, he's going to be short to equip it.
Yeah, he can't do it. Oh, he just noticed.
Oh, he drew a Thought Cast, and Theau Ghost Courted the island, so Alan couldn't even cast that Thought Cast.
Oh my god. Draw for Theau. Land. Cash in the canopy. Send in with a team.
And now Alan has to block 2 of them, which means that even if he draws Arcbound Ravager, he'll be 1 point of damage short.
All right, so Memnite jumps in front of 1, Ornithopter in front of Flicker Wisp. Alan down a 1. Draw. Darksteel Citadel. And that does it. Theau Mery moves on to the finals. He's so excited, you can see. Taking a look at the next couple of cards. Mono White Hatebears in the finals here at Grand Prix Las Vegas.
All right, so we know the composition of our finals. We know that it's going to be Affinity against Mono White Hatebears.
So basically what we just got to see.
Yeah, and that was a fast match. It was a lot of back and forth. 3 really quick games. Game 2 was actually literally 1 turn long. And then yeah, we're gonna see an aggressive finals one way or the other, and we're still live for Mono White to win both constructed Grand Prix in Las Vegas.
Or according to you, all 3 of them.
All 3, if you're willing to lie. Yes.
If you'd like to turbo draft, please make your way to registration. Once again, it is time to turbo draft.
Alrighty, sorry for that brief interruption, but we were getting word that our other match is actually moving into Game 3, so we're going to move them over to the other table, but while we wait for them to do that, let's do some Fact or Fiction.
Alrighty. That's one way to do it.
1v1 Commander.
1v1 Commander should be a Grand Prix format, was the glimpse we got of that Fact or Fiction. So I've actually played a fair amount of 1v1 Commander at this point.
Yeah? How do you like it?
It's on Magic Online, and it is basically like playing Legacy Singleton, because it's all the powerful cards from Magic, but not in any format you're used to, and only 1 copy of each. And then you also have a commander. So I played with like Baral, Chief of Compliance, Jace Fringe Prodigy, Vendilion Click, Teferi. I think you can play decks other than Mono Blue, but I haven't tried them yet.
So one of the things that I have heard that's pretty cool about 1v1 Commander is that what ends up happening in something like Legacy Cube or even sometimes a Powered Cube is that blue-green is very good. And it just is, a lot of people end up wanting to draft that color combination because it is very powerful. So 1v1 Commander is a way to kind of even that out, right? You don't get everybody in the same cube and then you're like, oh, I wanted to draft this deck, but I didn't get to draft this deck. 1v1 Commander is a way to kind of get everybody playing whatever they wanted to play. So, I mean, I could see it be sweet. I don't know if it's necessarily a Grand Prix format.
My guess is that it's not quite balanced enough to be a Grand Prix format.
In what sense?
If you look at the undefeated 1v1 Commander lists, they're completely dominated by blue decks. It's not all mono blue, but Baral decks are pretty popular. You have like the Vile Smasher, Ludovic decks that because there's commanders with partners, so you can play multiple different commanders and then have access to a lot of different colors. Brea, Ethereum Sculptor, but these all involve blue. Just if you look at the history of Magic, it's exactly what you just said. All the great cards are blue.
Yeah.
So that's the reason that cube blue tends to be overdrafted, and in 1v1 Commander it's similar. So under the current banned list for 1v1 Commander in the current rules set, I would say that it's not quite where it would want to be for a Grand Prix format, though I think the format is a ton of fun and I've enjoyed playing it.
So I have not played any 1v1 Commander, but I have heard this opinion from people who have. Baral is too strong, right? Because you can always just cast it on turn 2. Does it make it too good?
It basically makes it super consistent. Like Baral or Jace Friend's Prodigy enable like High Tide combo or Polymorph combo. You also just can play a really grindy value deck with like, you know, Brea, Ethereum Sculptor, or you have something like Jori and Ruin Diver and just like red-blue deck with all these cantrips.
That's really sweet.
It is sweet, but it's, people get sick about playing blue every round.
It's super consistent and it does the same thing every time, right?
Yeah, there are some counter decks like Surak Dragonclaw.
Okay.
All uncounterable creatures.
Sure.
So, but that deck still has blue in it. So
yeah,
I suspect that it's not where it wants to be for a Grand Prix format, despite it being a very fun format to play.
All right, let's take a look at our next one. You have rare drafted more more than you would like to admit in a competitive tournament.
Well, I know you definitely have, so.
I don't actually. I used to, I think. I think I let go of rare drafting at some point, but I think before that it was like, well, these two picks are kind of the same. This one makes my deck a little bit better. This is a rare. It's kind of sweet. So, I mean, I think I'm going to have to go with fact, even though it's changing lately.
Well, I definitely have to go with fact. And in my, third ever Pro Tour.
It's a Pro Tour. Okay, I like the story already.
Pro Tour London. It was Kamigawa block draft. I started 1 and 2. I won 2 in my first draft. And this is the all draft Pro Tour where you had to go 4-2 to make day 2. So
all draft Pro Tour?
Yeah, it's just 5 drafts.
That's so cool, though.
Yeah, obviously it was great. So you had to go 4-2 to make day 2. I started 1-2. I won 2 in my first draft.
Yeah.
I opened my pack for my second draft, and there was a cranial extraction. And it was worth $20. And I was like, look, I'm 1-2. Whatever. So I took cranial extraction. And then in one of the later packs in Saviors, I ended up taking Tendo Ice Bridge, which was also worth something at the time.
How much was it?
Like $10 or something. And so I did some rare drafting. I actually ended up 3-0ing the draft, making day 2, losing playing for top 8 of that Pro Tour.
Oh, jeez.
But I ended up like 1st and 5th picking, value.
Somehow not punished?
Yeah.
Hashtag no justice?
I wouldn't do that these days, but at that point, yeah. I guess I would.
I can totally respect that.
So
I mean, I've definitely done it too.
I'm going to say fact.
Sure, me too. All right. All right, so this is Mani Davoudi versus Ben Coursey. Actually, Mani is a friend of mine, so even though I was kind of crushed to see that taking turns was not making it further in the top 8, I was happy to see Mani here. So let us know, who do you think is going to win? Is it going to be Team Mani, Team Ben? Let us know on Twitch, Twitter, anywhere really. And this is Game 3 here at Grand Prix Las Vegas. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the semifinals here at Grand Prix Las Vegas. Gabby Sparks joined by Luis Scott Vargas, and we have Mani Davoudi playing Affinity versus Ben Coursey, also playing Affinity. Looks like we know who is going to be in the finals, but not exactly which person. All right, Luis, in the Affinity mirror, how important is it to be on the play?
Oh, it's very important. It is a little less important than in Game 1 because both players have cards like Gear per Ether Grid, Mani has Ancient Grudge. These are the kind of cards that make it so even on the draw you can just land some good disruptive elements, but being on the play is so great. Ben Coursey actually has Ceremonious Rejection in his deck in his opening hand, so being on the play goes a long way there.
All right, so Signal Pest, Ornithopter.
Oh, is that a Masterpiece Ornithopter?
It's real pretty.
Wow. That's actually like a perfect masterpiece. Like when I heard Ornithopter was a masterpiece, I was like, wow, that is awesome.
Yeah, it is.
For some reason, it just works out.
Spring Leaf Drum, Dark Steel Citadel, Welding Jar. Ben has a very, very nice Affinity deck over here. Mox Opal. And enough to equip it onto that Ornithopter. And bam! In come the Signal Pest and Ornithopter. Turn 2, Cranial Plating. Not bad.
Yeah, clocking in for 5 on turn 2, and then I think the last 2 cards in Ben's hand are Ceremonious Rejection and Galvanic Blast. So having a turn 2 plating equip with then 2 disruption spells left is exactly where you want to be.
All right, so Glimmer Void in play, and Arcbound Ravager for Mani. And just a pass. All right, so tapping that Ink Moth Nexus. For that Spring Leaf Drum. All right, and counting the number of artifacts here for that Cranial Plating.
And it looks like he activated the Ink Moth. Is that what he did with the mana?
Yeah, it seems like that is what happened. Galvanic Blast. So this does manage to fade a big attack from the Ornithopter.
Yeah, and Mani having the turn 2 Galvanic Blast up was very important, and I think that this turn 3 might be quite good for Mani, despite Ben having a very aggressive hand with, again, Galvanic Blast and Ceremonious Rejection. Mani has Gear per Ether Grid in hand, and landing that with a ton of artifacts in play could be very strong. At least I think that's what the card he has in hand, and both players sided in 2 copies.
Is it mostly in there for the mirror?
It's for the mirror and for like decks with Lingering Souls or decks with like creature decks with Stony Silence. Like I would expect them to bring it in against the Hatebears deck, whichever one of them wins this round.
So 2. For an Arcbound Ravager.
I'm not gonna lie, we both waited for the dice to go on that to
Yeah,
verify.
obviously. It is kind of sweet that Affinity gets so many masterpieces.
Yeah, it makes sense.
If you want to make your deck real nice, you can definitely go all out. All right, so Signal Pest coming in.
For a potential 5 points of damage here.
Looks like Mani's just taking it. This drops him down to 10. This is going to pass the turn back to Mani. Mox Opal for the turn. Oh, and you were completely right. That is a Gear Up or Ether Grid.
And I think the reason he waited last turn is he wanted to play around Spell Pierce, is my assumption. Because Ben does have them, and he may have sided them in. Because this is game 3, Mani may have seen them in game 2. Because if this Ether Grid resolves, then Ben basically can't win. It's very difficult, because Mani has access to 6 untapped artifacts right now. That's 3 points of damage. Next turn, potentially, if he plays another artifact, that would be 4 points of damage, and it's individually targeted. So Mani is going to be able to whittle down Ben's side of the board very, very quickly.
All right, so Galvanic Blast targeting that Ornithopter. Yeah, targeting the Ornithopter. It's going to get eaten by the Ravager.
And that will make it so Manny can only shoot twice with grid right now, but that's still enough to do a significant amount of damage.
That Ravager continues to grow. It eats that Spring Leaf Drum.
It looks like Ben is just moving in onto a Signal Pest and getting a big flyer into play and hoping that that'll be enough. Though Manny can deal 3 damage next turn, so I think Ben may have wanted to make Signal Pest into a 4/4 or 4
like
toughness
eat that
creature.
Opal too.
If that was his goal.
So Ornithopter for Ben. Signal Pest coming in.
And if
Can't be blocked.
And if Ben can top deck another Galvanic Blast, then he's going to be able to finish off Manny. But
yeah, and these 2 artifacts are these 2 activations of the grid. Take down the other Ornithopter.
Looks like he's deciding he really wants to activate that Ink Moth Nexus to deal an extra point because that'll take Manny to 4. It looks like he's going to end up dealing 5 instead. But once Manny untaps with all this grid activation up, then it's hard for Ben to really assemble anything. The funny thing is, Ben could have cast Ceremonious Rejection on Ornithopter some turns ago. He didn't, which made sense at the time. It's not a very imposing card. But had he done that and been able to Galvanic Blast Manny instead, I think he would have actually been able to attack for enough damage.
And Ben draws a Cranial Plating for the turn.
But unfortunately, the Signal Pest, it needed to be 1 more toughness to survive here.
Cranial Plating number 2 hits the board. Signal Pest comes in, and here we're going to see a couple activations. 1, 2, 3 activations, and away goes the Signal Pest. No damage now to Mani, and now Mani gets to untap with all these artifacts too. All right, so now Mani's starting to use the activations to go at Ben.
Looks like he might be playing another Mox Opal here. One reason to main phase shoot, so you can eat Mox Opal with Ravager, then play another Mox Opal because it is legendary.
Yep.
Did everyone who foiled out their modern deck make top 8? Is that the secret? You just
I think so. Maybe you're supposed to foil out your deck, and then you're well en route to the top 8. Ravager coming in for 3. This drops Ben down to 14. It's a Signal Pest, but these Signal Pests don't do anything against the Girapur Ether Grid. Mani continues to activate. Drops Ben down to 12.
Ben's got a turn left.
Steel Overseer. Gonna get Ceremoniously rejected. Ravager coming in. Down to 9. All right, Ben.
Ben counted things up, but I think Monty nailed it. I think that Girapur Ether Grid is just going to take Ben down here.
And that does it. Mani Davoudi advances on to the finals playing Affinity. The Girapur Ether Grid went the distance.